Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. In today's episode, we are covering court day. The accused Idaho stalker has court today in Pennsylvania for his extradition. We already know that he plans on waiving his extradition, not giving it problems, wants to expedite this, according to his public defender. Let's go ahead and dive into what we know as of today. Today is court day of his extradition hearing. We're going to be diving into that. We're going to be asking, is this his attempt at a perfect crime? When it comes to a perfect crime, it is that crime that you get away with, right? It's that crime a person commits and actually gets away with it. When we think of a perfect crime, there are not too many that automatically come to mind. And I even had to look up what would be even defined as the perfect crime. Because from what I am learning as I dive deep into Bryan Kohberger, it looks like if all of this stuff is true, and he is the said person, what we learn about this guy and all the studying he was doing in criminology, in forensics, in DNA study, and all these things truly makes me believe he was trying to commit the perfect crime. That perfect crime, it goes undetected, right? It's that unsolved mystery that they never get the ending to. This is that unattributed to an unidentifiable perp. So a lot of times that perfect crime is you never get caught. In this particular case, they did catch someone the police believe is the main person who did this to the four kids. And truth is, when you think of a perfect crime, what perfect crime would be thrown at you first? And this is what I found. In March 2009, a $6.8 million jewel theft in Germany was described as being close to a perfect crime. In that, despite having DNA evidence, again, they are said to have DNA evidence in this case. But outside of that, in this jewel theft in Germany, there was no other evidence except the DNA evidence. Does that not sound familiar to this case? They have only found DNA evidence is what we're finding out so far. After he arrives back to Idaho, when he's extradited, they will release that. My guess is we'll have those affidavits in the next 24, 48 hours is my guess. In that jewel theft in Germany, the police were unable to bring the case to court since the DNA belonged to one of a pair of identical twins. Now, so far, that is not the case here, and that could cause it to be problems, right? And so there was other examples where, again, identical twins avoiding punishment include juries unable to reach a verdict in different RAPE trials. And so I could see where identical twins was like, okay, we don't know who did this. But the infamous 1987 Opera House heist in India by a group of men impersonating CBI officers, that was described as a perfect crime. Was Bryan Kohberger trying to commit a perfect crime? Well, we don't know everything yet. Little by little, things are coming out. But from what I have been learning, I truly believe he was trying to commit the perfect crime. He was even having surveys for criminals to get into the mind of them so that he knows what to avoid, what to expect. To me, that's trying to commit the perfect crime. And so today, he has his day in court. And he says he's eager to prove his innocence. But, they are hoping that we have everything in order. But today is his court date. And in court, he is expected to waive his extradition, and boom. But we have finally seen him outside of the courthouse. This is the first time we are seeing this guy since he was arrested, right? So he was arrested on Friday, December 30th. Today, he arrives at court in handcuffs for his extradition hearing. Now, his extradition hearing is not till 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm on the Central. That is 2:30. If you're on Mountain, that's 1:30. If you're on Pacific, that's 12:30. So now you know what time to expect that. But here he is, the Idaho suspect, Bryan Kohberger. He has arrived at court in Pennsylvania for his extradition hearing that will send him back to Idaho, where he is accused of this heinous crime. He is accused of hurting them in cold blood. This is one of the most prolific incidents a lot of people have heard of. The crime scene people who have showed up, the law enforcement, the coroner, they've all said this is the worst of the worst. We've not seen worse. Most of them, yeah, all of them. Moscow, Idaho is not a place that a lot of crime happens. It's been since 2015 since something like this has happened. Now we're getting to find out more about who this guy is. Now again, it's only been Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Today is Tuesday. It's been 5 days since he was arrested. And police, they are literally blocking off all the roads outside of the courthouse. Local police, they've closed off all the roads that are surrounding this in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. I'm familiar with Stroudsburg because my son lived there for many years as a teenager, before he was a teenager, went to school there. And that's my connection to it. I've not actually been in Stroudsburg. I believe I have some part of Pennsylvania. But he is here now in court ahead of his extradition hearing. Now, this is in Monroe County Courthouse in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And they literally have barricades blocking the roads off, awaiting for his extradition hearing, which is in a few hours from now. Literally less than 3 hours from now, 2.5 or something like that, he will be having it. Now, it is completely closed off to the public, but they will allow some investigators. They will allow, of course, they'll allow the investigators, but no cameras are allowed inside the courtroom during the hearing, but media outlets have set up tents outside the building. When it's time to leave, I don't know if they're going to clear it off. I don't know all of that yet. But he is not expected to fight extradition. Again, he is accused of this November 13 mass slaying of the 4 University of Idaho students. And now he could return as soon as today. It could be right after his hearing. It could be tonight, or it could even be, in the morning or something like that. And how does someone get back? Well, we're going to continue to learn more about this, and I will share with you. Today is court day. So dive in, get your drink. Let's dive into this court case. We don't really know too much. What we do know is they are literally on lockdown with this guy because they know someone would want to hurt this guy. I've already seen comments on Twitter and other places where they're like, I hope someone has cojones enough to do something. It's like, what are you, crazy? Like, let it play out in court. Let it play out in court. Jason Labar, his public defender in Pennsylvania, he said that Kohberger does not plan to fight extradition. Now, Kohberger is likely to just sign the extradition paperwork right out of the gate. Even Labar said just likely to sign the extradition paperwork and move on with this. Kohberger, he was arrested on December 30th. Again, what is that? 7 weeks since November 13th incident, where they were found in an off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. Now, Latah County prosecutor Bill Thompson, he said that Kohberger faces 4 first-degree charges. First-degree, M-U-R-D-E-R charges, and felony burglary charges. Thompson even said that at the time that the case will move forward more quickly as long as he does not fight extradition. Now, again, the probable cause affidavit that is tied to his arrest, why they arrested him, what everything that's in there that pertained to get this warrant for him, this is currently under seal, and it will remain under seal until he returns to Idaho again, either today or tomorrow. So, my friends, I believe over the next 36 hours, more information will come out. I'm going to do my absolute best to stay on top of that around my busy schedule. I know a lot of people are following this because they're not looking to read all the articles, right? They're looking to just go one place, get everything, move on. I'm trying to be that source for you as well, as I'm trying to be a voice for the victims. Justice for Idaho 4. These 4 kids, they can't speak for themselves any longer. They can't ask for justice for themselves. We have to be that voice. That's all I'm trying to do here. And so the suspect himself, he says, this is out of character. That's literally what he is sharing. Like, okay, out of character for who? Now, his public defender, he said that, hey, my client, who I'm only representing him for his extradition hearing, my client is very calm ahead of his first court appearance today. Jason Labar, he's visited Kohberger several times, but he has not spoken with him about the 4 counts of first degree against him and his burglary charge against him. He's not talked about that at all in reference to anything about that, as that's not his place. Labar tells NBC's Today that Kohberger is aware and understands the court proceedings and what to expect in Pennsylvania and Idaho court. And he added that Kohberger calls the charges out of character and believes he will be exonerated of this. Again, if they don't find a weapon, we're going to be diving into some of the rumors. I know a lot of us don't like rumors, but when you get these rumors from someone who might have shared something else that turned out to be true, you kind of lead to, maybe I should pay attention a little more. So we're going to dive into that as well. But could a second person be arrested soon? That's my question to you, theorizing. We know he may not have an accomplice, but what about an accessory to the crime? They haven't ruled that out, right? Where have they ruled that part out? So we have to take into account that if anyone at all helped him try to get away with this, a roommate, someone who was in a close relationship with him, helped burn his clothes or get rid of whatever he was wearing, that would be an accessory, right? Let me know. I'm not a detective. I'm just playing one as a virtual one, right? I am not a detective. I did not go to criminology school or anything like that. This guy, Bryan Kohberger, whether he's guilty or not, he knows a lot more about this than me. But I am learning as I'm learning from those who talk, the former experts. So every day is a learning curve, right? But Labar says he has been very easy to talk to and has a calm demeanor. That's what he says. So that is also why The little bit that I have learned about him, in learning who his character is, from what we are learning from former classmates, from who he has studied under famous, authors, famous people who have studied in the field. An article came out by Daily Mail about a inmate who was released, and Daily Mail asked her about Bryan Kohberger. The lady went off and said some really creepy things. I'm going to tell you right now why I didn't report on that, because I do not believe that. I do not believe what she was saying, because by all accounts, he would not be foolish enough to act like that and say that. Okay? I would think common sense should come into play on some of this. I get it. YouTubers went and shared that. It brings in the views. I get it. But hopefully they prefaced it by, I don't believe it. At least save yourself some face there. I didn't watch any of it. I just saw the title. I saw what they were talking about. I knew as soon as Daily Mail broke it, my first thought was, that didn't happen. I'm not buying that. So, and it's a female who should not be in the same housing together. Why would a Daily Mail person say, hey, did you hear about Bryan being here? Did you see him? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Come on. We gotta be careful on some of this. I'm guilty. I know. Sometimes I want to just jump on a story and be like, oh my gosh, but other times I better be thinking a little further if that's something I really want to dive into. When I saw this Daily Mail article, I'm like, I don't believe it. I'm not even going to talk about it. New York Post then talked about Daily Mail exclusive, and then other people started talking about Daily Mail. I get it. They're doing hey, Daily Mail did this. Same thing. I could do that same thing. I just don't believe it. I should probably do a video about how people are just going to want attention and look at what's going on. That would make more sense. That would actually make more sense. But then again, am I sticking to true crime? This is a true crime channel. That's why it's named after that, right? So I feel like we got to be careful. But from what we are learning about Bryan and who he is, even if he didn't do this crime, what we are learning about his personality doesn't tell me anything that he could do what was being said by that inmate, that former inmate now, who was being released. That's why you didn't see me report on that if you've been following and wondering. But Bryan is said to have been very calm and believes that he'll be exonerated. What do you think? What do you think in reference to that? Do you think that he is going to be exonerated? Personally, I think that since they have DNA, and I am actually on the page that Chief Fry was so very careful about everything that he said, I truly believe they have their ducks in a row. I truly believe they have their ducks in a row. Literally, what do you think about that? What is your thought process on that? Do you think anything along those lines? Now, you can see him here when he arrived at court. This one is on Twitter, News Nation. But you can see when he arrives at the courthouse wearing red. Now, again, he's the one that was arrested in connection with the November 13 incident. And so now he is facing court today only for extradition. That is it. You can see all the police that are surrounding. Some reporters were allowed through the gate. Of course, makes sense. But he was seen dressed in a red jumpsuit as he was led out of the transport van. Officers were seen walking him from the van to the courthouse as reporters shouted questions in his direction. One guy even said, "Hey, Bryan," like he was cool with him type thing. I don't know if that was to get his attention or the guy was nonchalantly just saying it. Others are like, "How are you feeling? Are you ready to go to Idaho?" Those were some of the questions that were thrown at Kohberger as he walked towards the courthouse in handcuffs. Kohberger, he glanced in the direction of the reporters when he was first exiting the vehicle, almost like that one person that said, "Hey, Bryan," you can see where he looks right there when he looks towards them. And but other than that, then he looked forward, kept going. That quick glance is enough for him to have in his memory bank. But he did not look at the crowd otherwise, except for that very first glance. And of course, he's not going to respond to any of their questions. Watch how he looks. Boom. Real quick old glance. And I find it interesting. An ex-FBI agent was sharing that, this suspect could be linked to other MURDers. I truly do not think that. I kind of believe that this was his first time on what would lead to something bigger. Like, I believe he was on his way to becoming a serial K, but I don't think he already did something before this. And this ex-FBI agent, who I follow her very much on Twitter, and I do appreciate a lot. I kind of disagree with this, but Jennifer Koffendorfer, she said that it is very plausible, great term to use there, that the murder, that the person that is responsible for the 4 students, if this is the guy, was maybe not a first-time offender. That's what she shared. She says, I do think it would be rare that he would try to commit 4 murders and maybe possibly even was thinking about committing 6. I do believe that his intention was the whole house. I just believe it did not go as smooth as he thought, and he was actually, now I better get out of here type thing. Especially if that is true, his neighbor, or her neighbor, or the girl's neighbor, heard a loud scream. And then if he is fighting with Xana and Ethan, and they could have, led or said something or shouted or did something that would then interfere with, this is not going the way he thought it would go. That's why I believe that he did not make his way to the first floor. I feel like he felt like maybe he ran out of time, and now the police could have already been on their way, because of, why wouldn't the 2 girls, if they hear anything, call 911? Unless they know him. We don't know the connection yet. Right now, until they open up that affidavit, we won't really know much. But Jennifer Koffendorfer, she shared, if this was his first time to do this to 4 people, that would be very unusual in the trends of a fledgling serial K. Some of these words, I'm trying to be a little careful. Bryan, who is the main suspect, he is set to appear in court this afternoon for his extradition. That's why we're having court day edition. And is he connected to any other ones? It's easy to say yes when you're like, well, right now anything is possible. I just don't know that. I just do not quite see that. But Jennifer, she said law enforcement should be looking at all cold cases with a similar modus operandi. Am I pronouncing that right? Operandi? M-O, for short. So much easier to say M-O. That, I agree 110%, and I bet you they are. They're going to be studying him every which way. But, as we know, his parents believe that he is not responsible. They are sorry for what the family is going through, but they believe law enforcement has the wrong guy. Now, Kohberger's parents and sisters, he has 2 sisters, they're both expected in court. Stephen Gonsalves, I believe, is expected in court. So one representation of each family member of the victims is expected in court. They are going to make sure this guy knows they will never let this up if he is the guy. And so the family of the suspect, Bryan Kohberger, they are expected to be in court today. Kohberger's public defender, Jason Labar, tells WFLA Josh Benson that his client's parents and 2 sisters plan to attend the extradition hearing Tuesday afternoon. He says they will not be permitted to visit Kohberger while they are there. And I completely understand that. If they want to visit him, they're probably going to have to wait a little bit. And over the weekend, the family of Kohberger did release a statement expressing their sympathy for the 4 victims and support for Bryan. And they said, first and foremost, we care deeply for the 4 families who have lost their precious children. There are no words that can adequately express the sadness we feel, and we pray each day for them. The family said that they plan on just, let the legal process unfold. And they said, we love and support our son and brother. They're going to just love and support their son and brother. What else are they going to say unless he said, I did it? Maybe they're going to support him anyway. Right now, he's claiming not guilty. His family says, we don't believe this, that he would do this. And they're also, and I can please agree with this if you can, this is their home. I probably shouldn't throw it out there, but media's throwing it out there. This is part of this case. I cannot dive deep if I don't show you where they arrested him, right? Kind of doesn't make sense. But what I will not do is try to reach out to his family. Not at this time. I haven't had success in trying to reach out to any victims yet. Doesn't mean I won't in the future. As my channel grows, people want to get more attention on their cases. So, at the same time, they have asked for privacy at this time in the matter of what their family is going through. And they're asking that just let the legal process work out. Because they say we respect privacy in this matter, as our family and the family suffering loss can move forward through the legal process. And so they said we have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth. They're trying to seek the truth as well and promote his presumption of innocence rather than judge unknown facts and make erroneous assumptions. That's what they shared. And so throughout this, I can appreciate, yes, let's give them their privacy. I think that is extremely key. And with that, he says that he's eager to prove his innocence. His family says cops got the wrong man. That's what they're sharing. Here he is in court today. But let's see if they really have the wrong guy. It's only a matter of time, right? Number one, over the next 24, 36 hours, my guess, we'll get to a lot more information from that. And with that also being said, you got to ask yourself, how did they easily catch up with this guy once there was once that DNA stuff was made public? That's pretty interesting of its own, wouldn't you say? I think that they did get some of his DNA through the family stuff. Someone did the one of those public DNAs, and we'll dive into that a little bit here. But how did the cops use genetic DNA to get him? That to me is pretty interesting as well, because they tracked him down by tracing his distant relatives through genetic databases. Then they secretly collected a sample of his DNA, which they matched to that found at the crime scene. That's what experts had revealed. That's what they are saying happened. You see, they tracked him 2,500 miles from the crime scene. Now that he's due in court for his extradition hearing, we continue to find out more. But they did confirm over the weekend that he was tracked down by a combination of DNA tracing and investigative work. That is literally what they're saying. But you see, we always had the question is, like, he wasn't in the system, right? How did they get DNA from him? If he wasn't in the system, he did not commit, he didn't have a prior record, he didn't have any background that showed a problem, how did they get him on this? Well, there could have been a method that's known as genetic genealogy. That is what is said to have been found, how they found him. This is an increasingly popular and useful method of investigation where law enforcement traces suspects' relatives on ancestry websites. I recently did a video. I think I did the video, or I'm going to do the video. No, I did the boy in the box. You can check out my channel. I'll put a link in the comments. The boy in the box who was killed, who was taken away from this world like 50 plus 60 years ago in Chicago area. Until now is when they found out who this boy is. They did not have an identity on this little boy for generations. Literally, they did not have they didn't know who this kid was. He had died. They knew that his life was taken. They knew that part. They finally identified him as Joseph Augustus Zarelli. And it all started with familial DNA, is how they found him. One person bought a DNA for his girlfriend for Christmas. She breaks up with him before Christmas, so he does not give it to her. He says, let me do it myself. And that's when it opened up some serious wounds. It opened up a lot. And there's a good chance the person who's actually responsible for unaliving the child may not be alive at this time, because we're talking about 1957. And he was found in the most horrific way. Check it out on my channel. I'll link it, the story in the description. Hopefully I don't forget. But through familial DNA, that's how they were able to find him. So here you have again where they found a DNA that did not match where like this DNA that we're not too sure that this DNA should be here. We don't know the connection yet. Kayleigh's dad is said to have said there is a connection between him and Kayleigh. We don't know what that is. We don't know if he spoke out of turn. We don't really know much, right? We're still learning. But this way that they find genetic genealogy, the way they find other people, wow. This could very well be how they were able to trace him. Let me share with you what I have found. C.C. Moore, who is the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon and founder of DNA Detectives, they have helped law enforcement solve more than 240 crimes. Now, she did not work on this case, but they're widely considered to be the most authoritative expert in the industry. And so there was an interview done with her. And she explained the process that the FBI likely followed based on her own understanding. The first step in the investigation is finding a DNA sample at the crime scene, which we found. And so they find the DNA. In this Idaho case, the alleged crimes were so physical and brutal that it would have been easy for the killer to accidentally leave their own BLOOD. That's according to C.C. Moore, again, the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon and founder of DNA Detectives. And Moore said, if this is the K.I. Lur, then I'm sure he tried. He tried very hard not to leave behind a sample, given his background in forensics, but it's almost impossible not to, even if he was suited up like Dexter. Now, personally, I feel like the show Dexter is going to come up multiple times. As you know, when we were finding this out, I literally, when we got his name, my first thought was, this guy was trying to be like Dexter and be in the field and commit these crimes. I'm surprised that's not talked about more in reference to him. You know, the hit series Dexter. I've literally always felt like he might be trying to be Dexter. Again, I'm theorizing. I could be completely wrong. Now, Moore says, when you're in a frenzy stabbing someone, it's extremely common for the knife to slip and for you to get cut, even if he had gloves on. I truly have said that multiple times. The BLOOD could have been mixed with the victims. When that happens, you have to deconvolute it. That could have been what happened. We also know that one of the victims put up the fight of her life. Xana is what we believe. If that is true, she maybe was able to scratch him and they could have collected DNA from her fingernails. That is the most credible possibility that we will have until that affidavit is released. I truly believe Dana helped capture this guy. Again, I'm theorizing, I could be wrong. Building a DNA profile and running it through police databases is what they do when DNA is found at the scene. So they're going to build a complete profile and they're going to run it through the databases, which we know even Nancy Grace shared. They did that and no one came up in CODIS, meaning he was not someone that has been in trouble before. And so the first thing police do is run it through their own database to check if it matches the DNA of any previous offenders. And this tests the sample against 20 DNA markers, which is enough to identify the person if their own DNA is already in the system or if there is immediate relative in the system, a parent or a sibling. If both strike out, investigators have to look for genetic genealogy to perform a wider search for more distant relatives. That is what I believe they did. So they go through different parts, right? So first the test this tests the sample. So they're testing the sample against 20 DNA markers, which is enough to identify the person if their own DNA is already in the system. Now, when it's found at the scene, if it does not belong, again, the first thing they do is run it through their own database, see if there's anything there. Nothing there? Okay, let's run it through the sample against 20 DNA markers. Oh, it's still not there? Okay, let's go a little further and let's go check genetic genealogy. So all along, when all these people are doing these DNA trees to find, which we're going to probably do that as well, to see like who are we connected to where are we coming from, things like that. A lot of people. I know a good friend who recently found their sister through that. Little do we know that we're also opening it up for them to find and study the humans even a little deeper. And honestly, if it's going to help find creepers like this, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And so then if those other two don't work, then you got the genetic genealogy, which again is the wider scale to see any distant relatives. Now, unlike police DNA databases, those of commercial genealogy companies They can search for up to 1 million DNA markers, creating a much wider pool of relatives that may be in their system all across all of the markers out there. That gives the police a lot wider audience to see if there's any type of match. And when you think about it, to only now get all of this done in less than 7 weeks, wow, now that I see all this, right? While there are many commercial ancestry websites, only 2 allow law enforcement to search their databases openly. That's what CC Moore is sharing. And there's a huge, this is what she shares. There's a huge misconception that we use Ancestry.com and 23andMe, but we don't. Only the 2 smallest databases, GED Match and Family Tree DNA, do allow it, and they deal with around 2 million people. She continued, so with that, you have to either get lucky or be really skilled. Now, Kohberger's likely matches from those 2 databases are second, third, and fourth cousins. That's what CC Moore is sharing, not his closest relatives. In most criminal cases, Moore said that the suspect, who is eventually identified, has likely never met most of the people he or she shares DNA with. Wow. So the person that might have even led to him may not have been officially, they may not even know each other. They're related through the pipeline, through the DNA line, but they may not even know each other. So she says you get a match list which will have hundreds or even thousands of people on it, and most will only share tiny amounts of DNA. You're really hoping for a second cousin, but probably in the case they were working with third, fourth, and fifth cousins. She continues, sometimes you get lucky and it's a first cousin or even a sibling or parent, but it's very rare. She says, you're looking for patterns and commonalities, and you need to find that one person who is related to all of the people at the top of the list. Before we find who they are, we need to find what all the other people on the list have in common and who they have in common. Then, she says, you work forward from that and build out the family tree. And so they will use social media to build that family tree. They will use the public birth and death records to build a family tree. They will even use more to build a family tree. When the genealogy trail runs cold, investigators, they have to look at other ways to narrow down a list of suspects. She shares, when we get a match in GED match of family tree DNA, the vast majority of the time there is little information there. We have to figure out who's this person, who are their grandparents. Then when we are building forward in time, it's really hard work. She says, once you get past the 1950 census in the US, there aren't any more records, so we have to start using newspaper articles, birth records, and state databases. You can learn a lot from social media too. That is what CC Moore is sharing. And she says, as you come closer and closer to the present day, it becomes harder. In the US, we have search databases, basically these companies that collect information on all of us and compile it and sell access to these databases. She continues, like White Pages or Been Verified or US Search, you can put their name in and see who they are connected to. It's really difficult and time intensive. And honestly, that's what a lot of internet sleuths do. They spend a lot of this intense time to try to find answers, to try to help law enforcement, to try to be the one that solves the problem, to solve the case, to be one of the first ones that can break and say, this is what happened. Now, at the flip side is they can go the wrong direction in very many ways. This name, BK, never came up once. Never. And all the people that were thrown out there, Jack S, Jack D, fraternity, parents, no one leaned toward this guy who lived less than 10 miles away from the crime scene was studying this stuff. Generally, if they're studying it, it's to get into the field, not commit that part of the field. And so that's what we are learning in this particular case as well, right? And CC Moore, she says, in the UK, it would be extremely difficult and impossible sometimes because of the privacy restrictions. That's what she is sharing. She says, in Canada, it's extremely difficult for the same reason. In a way, we are fortunate, but on the other hand, if someone is worried about privacy, they should really be thinking about those databases, not the DNA websites. Very interesting point that she shares there. She says, your DNA is meaningless if I can't build the family tree. And then she continues into the narrowing down a suspect. Once the genetic genealogy trail has run cold, the investigators start looking at possible suspects based on other factors. Once we narrow it down, she says, to say grandparents, you've got to say, who are their grandchildren? Who is living in the right place at the right time? Who's the right age? From their DNA, we can also predict skin color, hair color, eye color. In this case, it's possible they didn't have enough to get all the way to his immediate family. Then they got to his grandparents and had to look at the male descendants. Wow, and how they find this. And she says, then they'd say, who drives the white Elantra? And obviously, you know, that is where they were searching for this white Elantra for a minute, for a while. I know. And the vehicle was spotted in the area around the time of it, right? So when they're matching the DNA, all right, who has a white car that might match this DNA? Right? Who might live in this area? Right? Which man could it be? Well, we got this Bryan guy who lives not far from the crime scene. We got family members who has a registered car, white Elantra car registered to them. Right? Interesting. So I find that very interesting in that how they're able to do this. We see why DNA led, but again, I feel like they're going to need more. But again, we don't even know what's in that affidavit. And so CC Moore, she says, it's possible they got 10 male descendants. They looked then at whether any of them fit. She says, once they found Kohberger's white Elantra, it will have been a huge aha moment. Then they can match him because they follow him, right? And she continues, plus the fact he lives just 7 miles away, most of the time the genealogy leads you right back to the scene of the crime. And she says, once a suspect is nailed down, genealogical investigators turn their findings over to the police. And so then undercover or covert teams then follow the suspect and kind of without the suspect knowing, obtain a sample from them in order to compare it to the sample that is found at the crime scene that was used in the DNA tracing. My friends, this is all coming together to literally understand how they got him. And let me tell you, unless he has the best reasons as to why he was at that crime scene, he's in trouble. He is in trouble. Because as she is describing this, I'm finding a lot to understand. Like, holy mackerel, I feel like I'm getting a complete education in DNA tracing when it comes to law enforcement. And how they tracked BK to this crime scene and to the white Elantra you know they find some stuff. I know that they got more coming. They got so much more coming. And so then we know that they were tracking this guy for 4 days, starting right before Christmas. Remember, he goes home for the holiday. So they already know he's in car with someone. Oh, that's his dad, right? And so they follow him without him knowing and grab his DNA without him knowing. And so now they have a sample from him. Now they can compare it to the sample that's found at the crime scene. That is how DNA tracing is used. C.C. Moore, who has turned over similar evidence to cops 250 times through her company, says this part of the process is often carried out in the same way it is portrayed in films and TV shows. Yay, something that they actually say, this is like the TV shows. Genetic genealogy is only a lead generator. It's not evidence. Interesting. She says it can be used to arrest anyone or in a warrant. We'll write a report up, explain how we came to this conclusion. Then law enforcement have to take this information and do a full investigation. It's a highly scientific tip, but police still have to start from scratch once they get it. They have to go and collect their DNA, which they do by following them. We've heard that's what's happened in this case. That's exactly what we have found out, right? And so she says, people don't get arrested based on my work alone. Yes, they have more. And now that we know he's going to be extradited and get back to Idaho, be served his papers, we'll find out what that more is. And C.C. Moore says what they get arrested for is once law enforcement has collected their DNA, and she says surreptitiously, and compared it against the sample found at the scene using only 20 DNA markers, and the lab says this is a match, hopefully when they can arrest, prosecute, and hopefully convict. And as we know, they were tracking them this whole time as a way to literally be able to get that warrant, right? We know that for a fact. They were tracking him the whole time in order to get that arrest warrant in hand, ready to go. And so in the meantime, they just kept tracking the perp, the suspect. So with that, we know 4 days of tracking him. When they actually got that piece of DNA, because again, we know all along DNA. The cop said DNA is what led them to him. And now we learn from a DNA expert how law enforcement would attain that legally, because this is said to be all legally. And now that they've processed that and went through the 20 DNA markers, and then the lab says, yeah, we got a match, folks. Here he is. Let's go even further. Again, they needed more than just that. And she says that the genetic genealogy portion is not presented to the jury. It's not something that needs to be explained in court. That's what she is sharing. She says, there are teams all over the country doing this on so many cases, following these suspects that have been identified, collecting cups and napkins, and sometimes they'll go through their trash. They've used envelopes that have been licked. We have seen this in crime scenes, or in crime shows. We have seen this in First 48. We have seen this in so many different how they found their perp. Have we not? So literally, if you are a true crime follower, then you know, yeah, this stuff does sound familiar, doesn't it? Literally, this does sound familiar, at least to me, who does follow a lot of this. What do you think about that? Literally, what do you think? Does that sound like this is all so plausible, isn't it? To me, it is anyway. What do you think about that? Because personally, it's putting two and two together for me, to be completely honest with you. Literally. And so now CeCe Moore, she's sharing. She is literally sharing in an interview that she did, and she is the founder of Parabon and founder of DNA Detectives. And so I think that there's a lot of credibility. She has helped law enforcement solve more than 240 crimes. Now, again, she did not work on this case. Let me make sure that I'm very clear. And so she says, we leave our DNA behind everywhere. Once you've been identified as a potential suspect, they're going to get your DNA. Police, they have not revealed their evidence against him because the paperwork, the affidavit, the arresting charges, and everything that they have around him cannot be made public yet. Again, today is the day that he's going to be extradited. So over the next 24 to 36 hours, we should have some more information, folks. But they have not revealed what kind of DNA evidence that he left at the scene either. So we don't even have that. But Moore said that the case highlights the need to run genealogy testing immediately after an unidentified sample is collected from a scene. And what that means is they had found a bunch of DNA, and then they were able to connect the DNA dots. Like, oh, this DNA goes to this person, let's talk to him. This DNA goes to this person, let's talk to him. And so forth and so on. But then when they started getting DNA that they could not match with anyone, that's when the digging went deeper. I'm loving the process of how they're finding the creeps like this alleged perp. Again, he's just a suspect at the time. We don't know. He is due his day in court. But right now, it's really looking like you better have some answers as to why your DNA was found at the crime scene. CeCe Moore says, I've been advocating for using this immediately as soon as they don't get that first hit using the police databases. It looks like that's exactly what they did here. Again, this is her side of what she's seeing too. So we also have to realize that as well. But my gosh, I'm buying into her side right now. Let me tell you that. She says, it can stop criminals in their tracks and prevent other people from being hurt. This can stop serial kills and, rapists, because we can identify them after the first time. She said this could have been a Ted Bundy or a Zodiac. I totally agree. I believe that this was something that was going to happen a lot more if we did not get this guy out there much sooner, right? He, to me, in my mind, was going to do more unthinkable things. This is just getting started. You see, Bryan, and I'm glad this is going back to Idaho so that we can find out if this is even going to be put on the table, because if he does not come forth, he is going to probably be seeking the prosecutors, Idaho prosecutors, they may be seeking the death penalty, right? He could face that if he is convicted of this heinous crime. That's according to a defense attorney. You see, Jim Seavey, he tells Nonstop Local that if he is found guilty, now, Jim, he's a criminal defense attorney, so he knows what he's sharing, but he said this would depend on the prosecuting attorney, Bill Thompson. Criminal defense attorney Seavey said that he thinks the death pen would be requested. He shares, I can't speak for the prosecuting attorney, obviously. He's the one that makes the determination based on consultation with his law enforcement people, the families, and some determination as to the personal circumstances of the personal defendant. CB says that in the case where the defendant is subject to a severe mental illness, that's up to Bill Thompson, the prosecuting attorney. He says that's really Bill's call. And according to the report, some legal experts have suggested that Kohberger could face a preliminary hearing within 14 days of arriving in Idaho. We're going to find out more almost every single day now that he's heading back to Idaho sometime today or tomorrow. But Thompson, he is the prosecuting attorney. He could appear before a magistrate judge and present evidence against Kohberger that supports the theory that he committed the crimes. And depending on what the judge decides, Kohberger would then face an arraignment in front of a district judge, followed by a pre-trial conference and then jury trial. So if you're asking yourself, what happens next? Well, first, what's he gonna decide on this? Because then he'll face an arraignment in front of a district judge, followed by a pre-trial conference and jury trial. And alternatively, Thompson could choose to present his evidence to a grand jury. He could do that. So we don't know where this is headed just yet. We just know that today is court day, where he is going to get his extradition papers signed by himself, and he is going to be off to Idaho. Where, and truth is, let's see, when we really think about it, all we want is justice for Idaho, right? After that, we want the right person to be charged for this. We don't know what they have on him yet, but I am truly one of the believers that they actually have something substantial on him. They have been tracking and following this and having sleepless nights. Truth is, they have went through the whole holidays going through this. And so now that he's going to appear in court, now the next phase begins in this, right? Really, all we want is the right person to be behind bars. And right now, it's not looking good for him. But at the same time, we really don't know. We really don't know. Now, there is some relief. Gonsalves family, they have shared, there is some relief. Stephen Gonsalves, who I believe is going to be in today's hearing, the father of one of the four university students, and he's the dad of Kaylee. He said this morning on Good Morning America that his family learned of the arrest the night of December 29th, the night before. And was it because he found out right before midnight? Because if he is this, you gotta factor in some things here, okay? You gotta factor in some things that is said to, okay, if he was found, the SWAT team got him at 3 a.m, that could very well be midnight. So if it was close to 3, it's not even midnight in some of Idaho parts. So Stephen saying that we found out the night of December 29th could have been right when they finally got the perp. It could have been right before midnight. So you got to also remember these time differences where to the dad, he finds out when it's still December 29th, they could have already arrested him in Pennsylvania where it's December 30th now. So you also got to take into account some of the things about that. But Stephen Gonsalves, he says, it felt like a cloud was lifted off of us. He says, it's like seeing sunlight after you've been stuck in a house for a month. So it's definitely provided relief and comfort to know that things were progressing and all this torture waiting had a purpose and a meaning. And I so much want justice for this family. My heart has been hurting for them. Now, Shannon Gray, who is the attorney for the Gonsalves family, told Good Morning America that the family is looking for any connections there might be between Kaylee and Kohberger. Any information they or the three other victims' families find of possible connections will be shared with Moscow police. And Shannon Gray said he and the Gonsalves family are curious to have access to the probable cause arrest affidavit, which is under seal until Kohberger can be extradited to Idaho. So they themselves do not know what's on there. Kohberger's extradition hearing, again, that's happening today. And so we hope that we'll know more about that either today or tomorrow. The cops are they're even worried about him being hurt. They even have to protect him. Now, is he wearing the vest in this? Remember, he's had a vest to protect himself from unaliving himself. Now, if he's supposedly innocent, he should not have to worry about that, right? But we don't really know so much about that. Truth is, we don't really know. Like, it does look bulky, right? He does look bulky. Is that a vest to protect himself? Or is it a vest to protect him from someone doing harm to him? Because we don't really know what is even in his mindset. What is he even thinking? Now, forensic psychiatrist Carol Lieberman, she tells Newsweek that her thoughts on the case and reflected on the news that Kohberger had previously studied psychology and criminology. You see, Kohberger graduated from Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania with an Associate of Arts degree in psychology in 2018. He then went on to receive a bachelor's degree from Pennsylvania's DeSales University in 2020 and finished his graduate studies there in June 2022. Lieberman suggested a person could use the study of these two subjects to calm the demons inside them that may have been telling them to do this heinous crime. She also suggested that by studying these two subjects, again, criminology and psychology, the accused could have used it as an opportunity to learn how to commit the perfect crime, which is some of what leads me to this. If you have been following this, do you think he was trying to commit the perfect crime? Personally, I'm going to go on record and say I think he was trying to commit the perfect crime. Now, former FBI agent who I talked about earlier, Jennifer Koffendorfer, she even shared that investigators are likely to have very strong evidence against him. I truly believe that. And she noted that the Idaho case has been highly publicized. And so just like her, I do not agree that they would have even announced an arrest or any accompanying charges unless they completely believed that he was the one that did this. This is why I am leaning towards they have the right guy. He does get his day in court, so he is right now just a suspect. He has not been tried for this, so we do want to do our best, but I feel like they are definitely on. If his DNA is found at that crime scene, why was he there? Why is he seen speeding away at that time frame? Why would this guy whose DNA was found at the crime scene be speeding away at the time of this incident? That doesn't look good for him either. They're still going to need more than that. It's like the case against Barry Morphew, who was accused of doing something to his wife, Suzanne Morphew, who is still missing 2+ years later, 2.5, almost 3 years later, still missing. When I was reading the affidavit, I'm like, they're going to need more than this. And guess what? They dropped those charges. I forget what that is. That's called with prejudice or something like that, meaning that we can file those charges again. So they're still, I hopefully hope that they're still researching that case. But when I was reading that affidavit on him, I'm like, this guy, they're going to need more than that. Including where they were using GPS as a way to track. Same thing with this guy. He is said to have been tracking him, that they have ways that they were able to ping his cell phone data and have it right around the same areas. That is great evidence as well, but they'll still need more to get a jury of 12. Remember, it's going to be more on the prosecution to prove their case than it is for the defense. The defense just has to rebut, or whatever the prosecutors throw at them. It's more on the states. The burden is more on them to prove their case. And so Jennifer Coffendorfer, she says that, she completely believed that this was the person who committed the crime, because they would not have arrested if they didn't have some really good charges around them. This is too highly publicized. I agree with her. And she added, we obviously know they have at least that threshold of probable cause met because a judge has signed off on it. A prosecutor's office signed off on it. But she says, but I think beyond that, they have very strong evidence. Even though we do know they're still searching for that weapon. To me, that is going to be a stickler until they get that. With that, though, we don't know everything. I'm going to tell you, I think they're onto something with this weapon as well. I said I believe they had a suspect, and then we later found out that they did have a suspect. I believe that they're onto something else that can lead them to the weapon and to maybe someone else who might have not been involved in committing the actual heinous incident at 1122 King Road, but someone who might have a lot more information than any of us internet sleuths or any of us online detectives have. Because there's still a lot of questions that remain regarding this incident, as authorities are still searching for that weapon that was used to stab all 4 victims. They have also not outlined what they believe the motive to be. So even that part, we still have to wait to find out what else do they have on it. Is someone else going to be arrested before this? Or maybe no one else is associated and he's been working on this by himself the whole time. Is that not always a possibility as well? I truly believe that's a possibility as well. But here we are still, we're finally, at least someone has been arrested, telling me they definitely are doing some type of work that is leading to them. But will this weapon hinder this whole thing? Will it hinder? We don't know the purpose, the motive, why he did this, and Kohberger's attorney has called for the public to reserve judgment until the case is resolved. We're gonna do our best, but we're gonna just give our opinions and our thoughts a lot as well. Is that the right thing to do? I don't know yet. As long as we say suspect, I guess we're allowed to say something, right? Because he has been accused of one of the most heinous crimes that America has seen in a long time. And let's be real, crime happens every single day. But nothing of this magnitude, or why he might have done this, we don't really know. But as Labar says, he should be presumed innocent until proven otherwise, not tried in the court of public opinion. We do know that it will be hard for him to get a fair trial now. It will be hard because everyone's already so caught up on this national driven attention case that we're like, if there's DNA evidence at the crime scene, He has been spotted multiple times by GPS. If this is accurate, they're going to have to prove this in court. This is not looking good. Now, court officials said yesterday evening that media will have access into the courthouse, but there will be no cameras allowed inside the courtroom where the hearing is happening. And so reporters will be allowed inside the courtroom on a first come, first served basis. And so I bet you a lot of them were lined up with their credentials, and hopefully, because they wanted it, they were there early morning, probably even last night, because a lot of reporters are going to want to be in there. Do they just ask for your badge, make sure you're really part of the media, or how does that work? Can I say, I created a YouTube channel, here's my badge? How does that work? Because truth is, some of us know more than some of these reporters because we have been following and diving into this case since day one. And they're getting their little bits and pieces as they're getting ready to report it, whereas we have been following this since day one and diving into this case since the beginning. Now, despite this, some media outlets have said that they may have access and will be providing live coverage. They already know they will be there. Now, there will be a lot of other ones having their moment where they're going to be having an updated blog as they're updated tweets, all types of things along those lines. And truth is, we want access. I'm sorry if there is anything that's breaking. I may not be able to still be on because, as you know, I'm a coach and I coach quite a bit. So I may have to leave and do something either late tonight, even though we're going to go see Avatar. But I'm going to do my best to share whatever coverage I can possibly share in the time. So thank you so much for tuning in, but we're not done just yet, my friends. Because truth is, as we continue to dive, hey, I think that we also have to be respectful that he is due his day in court. And that is today, which is court day, my friends. And now, my question, do you think they will be seeking the DP, the death P? I don't know what I can and cannot say on this crazy YouTube stuff. So I'm trying to be respectful for your ears, respectful for my mouth, respectful for providing what YouTube wants in order for me to share what I can about the victims. I don't know. And so, really, do you think that they will be trying to get that? I think that's a very interesting thing because he could face the DP if he's convicted in this. And if he is, what does that actually mean? Does it mean that he will plead out? I wonder that question myself quite a bit, actually. Do you wonder that? Will he plead out to avoid the DP? That's my thought process. But if he does plead out, does he also get a lifetime? He better be if he is guilty and he pleads out, this guy should never see the time of day again. Until someone reported this, and you can see this picture here, we didn't even know. The public was so in the dark about, honestly, had law enforcement, again, we don't know everything, but I'm going to share this, whatever I do know. If law enforcement released this image that, hey, we're looking for a white Hyundai Elantra, and we want anyone who might have been seen this thing around there, we need you to call us ASAP. How much sooner could they have been on his trail? Because I believe that was one of the mistakes done by law enforcement when they released that vehicle, which seems to play a big role in this. Because law enforcement was saying the person in this vehicle may have critical information. And what we are finding out now is, yes, they have more than just critical information. They have probably all of the information. And so now that he's arrived at the Monroe County Courthouse, he is seen arriving. Now, there's still some more unanswered questions that we hope to find out. What we won't find out, I don't think, in the next 24 hours, unless another person is arrested, is who or what, how do they know about this weapon? How do they know what led to this type of weapon? Because that should be in the affidavit, right? If this person is targeted, we should know by the affidavit who was targeted. Is that a fair statement? Will this affidavit share with us who was targeted in this case? I truly believe someone was targeted. I truly believe that. But we don't know why or how or where any of this connection is. Because Latah County Coroner Kathy Mabu, who is also a defense attorney, which she is too close to this and will not be representing him in court. But she described that the victims were done in multiple times with a large weapon. And described it as a knife. And she even described their wounds as pretty extensive. And this coroner, she has been a coroner for 15 years. And she says, she even said it's one of the worst crime scenes she's ever seen. Now, police, how do they know that this was a fixed blade knife? I think we should find that out in the affidavit as well. Because until they even find it, or at least what's in that affidavit, we won't know how they even know anything about this weapon. We do know that this was a very messy crime scene. Because Miss Mabu said there was quite a bit of blood. And we did learn that DNA had been recovered. This is what led to them. How, though? Was the DNA from sweat? Hopefully we find that out in the affidavit. Was it from defensive wounds? Was it from Xana having his DNA under her skin? Because that is definitely conviction worthy right there, if you ask me. That's my thought process. You see, police, they've taken more than like 4,000 pictures, maybe 5,000 pictures of the residents after the incident. And the door, it appeared to be unlocked with no sign of forced entry. But we find out that that sliding door has been open, is always unlocked. People come and go all the time. That is so scary on its own. I guess after the fact is very scary, right? But we don't know how the killer left their DNA, right? We don't know that part. What we do know is that finally, someone is arrested. This person will have their day in court in about an hour and a half from now. And that's really about as much as we know in reference to this. But he was caught, there were so many people that had to be written off as, no, this is not the suspect. No, this is not. And now hopefully we get to find out, is there a motive? When they open up the affidavit, will we find out about the motive? Truth is, I believe that we will find out a lot more. But is there an accessory to this? Is there anyone else that could be arrested as an accessory? Because here we find out that him and his dad, they drove cross country and was twice pulled over in Indiana. Is that how they got DNA? Did someone sign? Don't know. We really don't know. Now, we do know that he's going to waive his extradition. We do know that. And what we don't know is, Does he already have a public defender when he gets over there? Or is some high-profile attorney going to take their case pro bono and say, hey, here's my turn to shine and I'll get this guy off or something? We don't really know what direction this is going to go. Let me know in the comments what you think the direction will be here. What do you think? I think that he won't be getting very far. I also believe that there's going to be a lot of information that comes out from this guy. And there is no official word, but they say that he most likely will be flying back in a private plane. What do you think about that? I think that is going to be the only way that he'll be back there today anyway. If he's extradited today and he leaves today and he's going to get back there today, but will he be served today? That part we don't really know. I'm thinking that we won't know anything until tomorrow, 36 hours from now, something along those lines. I could be wrong. If something big breaks, I'll be pulling an all-nighter or something. I don't know. My office is too close to my bed, so my wife may not like that too much. But truth is, we just want justice. And you get this question. The neighbor said, this guy looks too wimpy, too skinny to be able to do anything, right? But does he look, this is a pretty big guy. 6 feet, right? Was he over 200 pounds? I don't really know, but he looks pretty big. But I truly believe he's got either a protection vest so no one hurts him, or a protection vest so he doesn't hurt himself. What the inmates call turtle vests. But do they refer to that for both? I don't really know, other than we just want to learn, what did he do? What was the purpose of this? And when will he have his day in court? This can play out for months. This can play out for years. We've seen it time and time again. This will not happen overnight, which is where we also have to be patient. We have to be patient because truth is, new forensic evidence will continue to come out. And from what I am finding out, there's forensic evidence around him in so many ways that actually ties him. And what we don't know is, was there someone else? Is there another party that even knows about his actions? Let me know in the comments if you believe there's an accessory to this. Again, it does not mean that the person was at the scene or committed it with him. Accessory more means someone else might have helped cover it up, right? Could police have that person as well? That could be an accessory, maybe before the fact or even after the incident. Could that possibly be? I did see where one person tweeted that there would be someone else who knows about this weapon. Could be. I don't know. Again, I don't know. But could that be a possibility? And he believes he's going to be exonerated. Not if there's DNA evidence that ties you to the crime scene and they actually have you stalking her. They have her complaining about a stalker. Like, if he was someone who was trying to do something worse than any other perp has done before, could he have done the unthinkable, like record this stuff? What kind of memoir could he have possibly kept on this? Right? You heard from a serial case daughter who shared that my first reaction was my stomach turned and I literally physically got ill. in reference to him learning about her dad, Dennis Rader, BTK. I find this very interesting. Maybe the tie is BCK, Bryan Christopher Kohberger, to BTK, which has something to do with anything but his name, more of what he did to them. And here we have this. We'll find out more soon. He is due in court in about an hour and a half. And he's going to waive his extradition. He's expected to waive the extradition and be off to there, right? And so here he is arriving in court today. Today's court day. We need justice. We need justice for Idaho 4. So he was arrested, and now he's going to face extradition, my friends. Until we know more, we really don't know more. And if I find out anything and I could jump back on within the next hour, hour and a half, you best believe I'll be here for you, my friends, because a lot of us rather tune in, engage, and share together as we follow this heinous, heinous crime. Rest in peace to the 4 individuals taken from this world way too soon. And hopefully now we can get justice for Idaho 4. Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, rest in peace. My friends, it's things like this why I do this show, to be a voice for the victims. To be a voice for you to know, wow, this can actually happen. Kaylee was complaining about a stalker. Come to find out, she actually might have the Idaho stalker, who is now accused of one of the most heinous incidents in American history. My friends, I'm Manny Rodriguez. Until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. My goal is to keep you updated and be a voice for the victims. Until next time, have a great one. Peace.